Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Nen. Nengay, coming to you all live from Nen's Gaming. And for today's video, I'll be going over the Week 10 scores, box scores from around the league in this Madden 05 franchise mode series that I'm doing. I'll be going over the players of the week for both the AFC and NFC side, as well as looking forward to the Week 11 matchups. Alright, so here we go. In this game, Falcons defense, they were able to swarm Chris Sims and the Bucs offense, nearly pitching a shutout until they gave up a touchdown in the fourth quarter late. But they dominated defensively and on the ground as they beat the Bucs 26-7 and improved to 6-3, while the Bucs fall to 3-6. Up next for the Falcons, they'll take on the Giants, while the Bucs will be at home taking on the one-win San Francisco 49ers. The Falcons defense for 6 takeaways, 3 interceptions, and they recovered 3 fumbles. He also had 3 sacks. In this one, the Colts held the Texans to 8 points. They didn't give up a single touchdown, and they totally dominate the Houston Texans in this one. Beat them by 30 points by a score of 38-8. Peyton Manning, another 300-yard passing day. 4 touchdown passes. He's now up to 31 touchdown passes on the season as he continues to chase Dan Marino's single-season passing touchdown record. And at the pace he's on pace to also shatter the single-season passing yards record by Dan Marino, also held by Dan Marino. It's no coincidence that he's the MVP frontrunner right now throughout the league. Colts defense kept the Texans out of the end zone, and they forced David Carr to throw 3 interceptions. So now the Colts are 7-2, and they'll take on the Bears next week, while the Texans fall to 4-5. They've now lost 2 straight. The Steelers hold on to beat the Browns 34-16. The Steelers were able to overcome 2 Big Ben interceptions. Really, what helped them get the W was the ground game. They had 180 yards on the ground, and defensively, although the Browns were able to move the football up and down the field, they couldn't get any scores in the red zone. So the Steelers defense only surrenders 1 touchdown, which was a late fourth quarter touchdown, as they were able to win comfortably against the Browns to improve to 7-2. They've now won 7 straight after starting the year 0-2. So next week they'll be taking on the Bengals, while the Browns fall to 3-6, and they'll take on the Jets next week at home. See there, Hines Ward, 9 catches, 138 yards, 1 touchdown. And yeah, Steelers defense, they held their own. Casey Hampton had a strip sack. Alright, the Jaguars hold on to beat the Lions 28-16. Both teams now sit at 3-6. The Saints outdueled the Chiefs and beat them by a score of 40-30. So now both teams are 4-5. Let's look at the stats real quick. Trent Green, 17-37, 188 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions. Aaron Brooks, 25-41, 391 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 pick. Deuce McAllister had a great game. 28 carries, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns, although he lost a fumble. But the big player from that game was Joe Horn, who had 9 catches 200 yards, and 2 touchdown scores. All right, the Ravens hold on to beat the Jets in a close game. This was the game that Vinny Testaverde started in place of the injured Chad Pennington. The Ravens defense kind of had an inconsistent game, but they did end up with 3 turnovers, 3 interceptions off Vinny Testaverde. But defensively, they gave up too many big plays, especially in the secondary. They gave up a 99-yard touchdown to Santana Moss late in the fourth. That was kind of infuriating, but they did just enough to hold off the Jets and beat them 31-28. See there, Jamal Lewis, 27 carries, 129 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, although he did lose a fumble. And then Todd Heap, another 8 grabs, 83 yards, and a touchdown. Santana Moss only had 1 catch, but that was that 99-yard touchdown. Wayne Corbett, 1 catch, but it was a big 31-yarder. And then Justin McCarron, of all people, went off for 100 receiving yards. Peter Boulware had a sack, a forced fumble, and an interception. Ray Lewis had an interception. And Chris McAllister started the game off with a pick 6. So kind of a back and forth game throughout, but the Ravens hold on to win. This was a brutal game for the Seattle Seahawks. Not only did they get pounded by the Rams 27-3, but they lost a lot of key guys due to injury, particularly at the quarterback position. As unfortunately for them, Matt Hasselbeck, he broke his elbow. And because of that, he'll be out for the rest of the year. So now they have to rely on Trent Dilfer, who came off the bench and, didn't do particularly well. 14-23, 142 yards. No touchdowns, 2 costly interceptions. The Rams dominated the trenches on both sides of the ground. As you see there, both Steven Jackson and Marshall Faulk, 100 yards on the ground, respectively. Both had over 20-plus carries as well. And the Rams defense, they recorded 4 sacks and had those 2 takeaways. So Seahawks, they might be in big trouble now with all the injuries they suffered. They're still 6-3, but they're a very shaky 6-3. They'll take on the Miami Dolphins next week, who are coming off their bye, while the Rams, they're 4-5, they go to Buffalo. Overtime game, the Titans hold on to beat the Bears despite blowing a double-digit lead. They had a 27-3 lead at one point. They ended up blowing it, and they needed to go to overtime to beat Chad Hutchinson and the Bears. As you see there, 499 yards passing for Chad Hutchinson, while Steve McNair, 36-62, 495 passing yards, 4 touchdown passes. And as you'll see in a second, Steve McNair ends up being the AFC Offensive Player of the Week. Titans, they avoided disaster. That would have been disastrous for them if they lost to this Bears team. But they're 5-4. They're over 500, and they'll be taking on the Jaguars in Jacksonville next week. AFC South Division rivalry game. Jaguars looking for some revenge for their Week 3 loss. The Bengals going to Washington, dominate by a score of 27-7. Bengals defense didn't give up a single touchdown. Washington got their lucky touchdown off a fumble by Carson. But apart from that fumble, Carson had an outstanding game. 31-41, 374 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Mark Brunell, Patrick Ramsey, they both stunk up the joint. Mark Brunell ended up being benched at halftime after he threw 1 ugly interception. But offensively for the Bengals, they were able to get 157 rushing yards and a touchdown from Rudy Johnson. And Look at this stat line for Chad. 15 catches, 246 yards, a long 77-yard touchdown, and 2 receiving touchdowns. So now both teams sit at 3-6. As mentioned earlier, the Bengals take on the Steelers at home, Week 11, while Washington they go out to Philadelphia, take on the Eagles. Cardinals beat the Giants 28-10 to get their second win of the season. They won this game particularly because of their defense and the running game. As you see there on the ground, 53 total rushes for 200, season high 248 rushing yards, and a touchdown. Emmitt Smith turned back the clock. 26 carries, had a vintage Emmitt Smith performance with 26 carries, 128 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. And defensively, on the defensive side of the football, as you see there, both Anquan Boldin and Larry Fitzgerald, although they didn't get a lot of yards, they both had 7 catches and scored a touchdown each. But like I was saying, defensively for the Cardinals, they had 7 sacks, including 3 from all-world safety Adrian Wilson, who also recorded an interception in this one. See there, 7 tackles, 3 sacks, interception. Dondell Hill, 2 picks, Dwayne Starks a pick. Then he had 4 other sacks by 4 Cardinals defenders, including Bertrand Berry. So the Cardinals are 2-7, and they'll take on the Panthers in Week 11, while the Giants fall to 3-6. This was the big game of the week between 2 NFC North division rivals. The Vikings were able to pull away late and hold on to beat the Packers 31-15 at Lambeau. Vikings defense really stepped it up, and they really needed it. They really needed to. As you see there, they really stuffed the Packers on the ground. 28 carries for only 36 yards for the Packers, while the Vikings were able to get their ground game going with 157 rushing yards. Vikings defense forced 3 second-half interceptions by Brett Favre. The Packers had plenty of chances to, win this game, but they just couldn't get out of their own way. As you see there, Dante Culpepper, 25 for 39, 347 yards, 2 touchdowns. Played a clean, efficient game. And as you see here as well, Randy Moss, another big game against the Packers. 12 catches, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, including a long 34-yarder in which he mossed, no pun intended, he mossed Al Harris. So now Randy Moss is over 1,000. He's over 1,200 receiving yards, and he has a league-leading 12 receiving touchdowns. Right now he's on pace for 20. So now the Vikings are 6-3. They'll be taking on the Lions next week, while the Packers, they're 7-2, and they'll be going to Houston to take on the Houston Texans. The Panthers destroyed the 49ers 44-10. Defense dominated, had their best outing of the year. The Patriots held the Bills out of the end zone, forced them to kick field goals. They posted 31 points in the first half, primarily due to 2 kickoff return touchdowns by Bethel Johnson, who had a 100-yarder and a 97-yarder. As they end up crushing the Bills 38-9, so they sweep the season series from Buffalo. Now they're also 7-2, and they'll be going into Arrowhead next week to take on the Chiefs, while the Bills will be back home trying to get a win over the Rams. Tom Brady, offensively for the Patriots, Tom Brady, he was the one carrying for them. They didn't get much on the ground, and also Corey Dillon ended up getting knocked out of the game due to injury. See there, they only had 78 total yards of rushing, but Tom Brady was able to do it through the air. He had 3 touchdown passes. 1 to Deion Branch, 1 to David Givens, and 1 to Kevin Falk. Patriots defense forced 3 interceptions, and they recorded 5 sacks. 4 of them by Tola Benta Kane, who had 4 sacks on 4 consecutive plays during the Bills' last possession. And the big Monday Night Football matchup between the Eagles and the Cowboys. The Eagles dominated the Cowboys. The score looks a whole lot closer than it actually was, but the Eagles' defense, they were able to dominate. They recorded 8 sacks, held the Cowboys to only 1 rushing yard. And the Eagles' defense, they were the main ones carrying. The Eagles' offense kind of inconsistent throughout. Donovan McNabb ended up being injured and being out the rest of the game. So they had to rely on Brian Westbrook and Terrell Owens for some offense. Terrell Owens, 12 catches, 174 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. So the Eagles get the win. They're 7-2. As mentioned earlier on, they'll host the Washington next week. I think that's a 4 o'clock game, while the Cowboys fall to 4-5, and they'll be going to Baltimore, Maryland to take on the Ravens. The Eagles defense recorded 8 sacks and 3 interceptions, 2 by Javon Curse, 2 by Darren Walker, a sack from Nate Wayne, 3 other sacks from Jamal Green, Hollis Thomas, Jerome McDougal. And as you'll see here for a second, not only is Brian Dawkins going to be your NFC Defensive Player of the Week, but he ends up being your horse trailer player of the game. So that'll do it for the Week 10 action. Now on to the Week 11 games. This is the week before Thanksgiving in the Week 12 slate. So you have these matchups. Cowboys at Baltimore, Rams at the Bills, Cardinals, Panthers. Peyton Manning looking to add more touchdown passes against the Bears. Tough AFC North rivalry matchup between the Steelers and the Bengals, Jets, Browns, Titans, Jaguars, Lions, Vikings, Broncos going to the Superdome to take on the Saints. This matchup between the 49ers and the Bucks, Raiders and Chargers, Dolphins, Seahawks, Falcons, Giants, Washington, Philadelphia. Kind of surprised that this is the game of the week, but the young up-and-coming Houston trying to prove themselves against the 7-2 Packers, and then the Patriots going to Arrowhead to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Now on to the players of the week. On the AFC side, Steve McNair, 495 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Also ran the ball 7 times, as he ends up being your offensive player of the week on the AFC side. And then on the defensive side, Nick Harper with his 99-yard pick 6 propels him to be the AFC defensive player of the week. And then on the NFC side, Joe Horn with 9 catches, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, while Brian Dawkins had 6 tackles, 2 interceptions, 1 forced fumble, and as he ends up being your defensive player of the week on the NFC side. Really, Brian Dawkins, he should have had 3 or 4 interceptions. He dropped a couple more that hit him right in his hands. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. If you liked the video, like, comment, subscribe down below. As always, I'll be back with some more content from the Week 11 slate as we're rolling by, through this Madden 05 series in the season. Alright, so have a good rest of your day. Love y'all. Peace.